First, let us know the complete PPE. Lab gown, head cap, mask, face shield, and gloves. The following are the armamentarium for tooth preparation. These are the armamentarium for composite filling.
I'm going to perform Class 3 cavity preparation. First, Class 3 is the lesion involving the proximal surfaces of anterior teeth, which may or may not involve a labial or a lingual extension and not involving incisal edge. There are three types of cavity designs in Class 3 cavity preparation. First, conventional is when caries is entirely on root surface, and second is beveled conventional when the cavity is large and have enamel margins. Bevel is given at an angle of 45 degrees to the cavity surface. And next is the combination design. Combination design is the cavity margins both on enamel and dentine. Using a round burr, it must be held perpendicular to the enamel surface, and initial opening is made to the adjacent tooth at incisogingival level of caries. We should remember that the incisogingival depth is 2 mm and the faciolingual depth is 1.5 mm and the axial depth is 0.2 mm into the dentine. We should consider first the outline form, then start working on dropping the burr towards the facial. Note, the rest finger is positioned on lateral or canine tooth. We should consider bevel conventional when the cavity is large and have enamel margins. Bevel is given at one angle of 45 degrees to the cava surface. After preparation, composite was placed conservatively with clear matrix strips tightly bound around the curvature of the tooth to impress continuous and smooth finishes without the use of additional instruments. The cavity margins would terminate onto tooth structure without crossing the marginal ridge, and facial enamel is retained for aesthetic intention. And next is to apply bonding agent to the enamel surface. Air dry slightly to remove solvent and cure it for 10 seconds. And lastly, place composite by increments. And after placing the composite, it should be cured for 20 seconds. Polishing and finishing.
Although the preparation of a Class 4 is usually limited to the fracture, the bevels help to mask the transition between the composite and the tooth structure. It also contributes to improve the retention and the marginal seal. So moreover, for an imperceptible composite tooth margin, it is suggested to create a long irregular bevel, 2 to 3 mm in size, on the facial surface, starting at the dentina enamel junction and decreasing in thickness towards the cervical. So a composite contouring disc may also be used to make an invisible margin and to round all sharp angles for a better composite blend. So the lingual bevel is usually limited to 1 mm only. The first step in composite filling is to apply the bonding agent onto the edged tooth surface using a small brush or applicator. Sometimes they also blow air gently over the tooth, so to ensure that the bonding agent has been dispersed as a thin even layer over the tooth's entire preparation and the edge surfaces. So once the bonding agent has been applied, dentist will light cure it. So the light from one of these units is usually blue in color. It activates a catalyst in the bonding agent that causes it to harden. It takes about 10 to 20 seconds of exposure. So an initial bond to the tooth has now been created. The bonding agent has established a micromechanical bond with the tooth's edge surface. Next is the creating the restoration or applying the composite restorative material. So the composite has the consistency of putty, so the dentist will apply it in small portions and gently pat each into place until that part of the restoration that they're currently building has the needed shape. Once the dentist is satisfied with the positioning of the dental composite, they will initiate its set using the same curing light they used to set the bonding agent. Usually somewhere between 10 to 40 seconds of exposure time is needed, in some cases possibly more. So, if after the placement of the initial amount of dental composite, the shape of the restoration is not yet complete, the dentist will simply need to add additional layers. So each one is usually limited to about 2 mm in thickness. That's just a little bit thicker than a dime, and each is placed. It's fully cured before the next one is added. Next is the 3-main shaping of the restoration. So a dentist will usually purposely overbulk a restoration and then use their drill to trim them back to their proper shape. They'll use successively finer and finer grit, polishing stones, burrs, the disc, and strips until a very smooth and shiny polish has been achieved.
Now, for Class 5 preparation, I use a straight burr to mark the area in the tooth to be prepared. After a while, I use an inverted cone burr to define the floor of the box. The total depth would be 1 to 1.25 mm. Ensure the length of the preparation is 1 to 2 mm and is placed 1 mm above the gingival margin of the tooth. For the walls, straight burr can be used. Lastly, use a straight burr to make the angles bevel. Now, in filling a Class 5 with composite, first is to apply a bonding agent for 15 seconds. Then, air to let the alcohol content to evaporate before curing for 10 seconds. And then, put the composite in the prepared area by increments and cure each for 10 seconds. Use an explorer to make sure that there are no excess composite. Cure the restoration for 20 to 40 seconds for final curing. Polish the restoration for better results.
These are the armamentarium needed for amalgam filling.
My armamentarium is a basic tray setup. Burr 1 or 2, 33 and a half, 169 or 245 and 330. You can also use hand instruments like angle former and enamel hatchet, and of course the explorer and the probe. So let's begin. Begin the cavity preparation with the round burr with a punch cut. Position at the central pit of the molar and go to a depth of about 0.75 mm. Change to a 169 burr with its long axis parallel to the long axis of the tooth to penetrate the pit to a depth of 1.5 mm. Maintain the 1.5 mm depth. Move the burr distally up to the distal pit. From there, extend the preparation buccally and lingually. Follow the distobuccal and distolingual grooves. Keep in mind that the buccolingual width of the dovetail is only 1/3 of the intercuspal distance. With the burr placed back on the central pit, the preparations also extend buccally and lingually. The buccal and lingual extensions are equal to that of the distal fish tail. Make sure that the intercuspal distance does not exceed the requirement. Extend the preparation mesially and prepare the mesial dovetail. It should not be placed too close to the mesial marginal ridge, and it Its buccal lingual width should also be 1/3 of the interclaspal distance. Prepare the dovetail to its proper position, which is 1.6 to 2 mm from the proximal surface. And always remember that you are making an ideal cavity preparation. So now round off the sharp projections with the 169 burr. Use the same burr to converge the buccal and lingual holes by slightly tilting it to create the convergence. Take care not to widen the isthmus and not to undermine the buccal and lingual cusps by making the walls converge excessively. Keep in mind that the cover surface angle must approach 90 degrees. A 245 burr can also be used to round off the sharp projections and to make the convergence of the buccal and lingual walls. It should be oriented parallel to the long axis of the tooth. Check the position of the pulpal floor. It should be 1.5 to 2 mm from the cover surface margin. If it is necessary to deepen or flatten floor, use a 33.5 burr. These same burr or hand instruments can also be used to make the internal line angles definite. Evaluate the preparation made and compare its features and measurements with those listed at the start of this exercise.
Okay, so before we proceed to filling up the amalgam class 1, we need to mix the amalgam capsule using amalgamator. So, set it for 5 seconds with medium speed. Alright, so let's proceed. Use the amalgam carrier to carry the amalgam and put it incrementally along the cavity prep. Plug it using the plugger and then condense for 3 to 4 minutes using the ball carver. After that, carve to recreate the tooth form and function. You can use the clerodiscoid, the Hollenbach, or the anatomical carver. Do not carve the anatomy too deep. Then do the post-carve burnishing to make the amalgam at the margins denser and to produce a smoother surface. And then polish after 24 hours.
Punch a hole, then create the outline form of the cavity using a round burr. Make an initial depth of 1 mm, then extend the cavity prep all the way to mesial marginal ridge and eventually make it out of contact with adjacent tooth. Define the line angles and flatten the pulpal floor using an inverted cone burr and make the depth 1.5 to 2 millimeters. You can further define the line angles using an hand instrument. And lastly, extend the proximal box 0.5 mm cervically. Mix the powdered amalgam and mercury using the amalgamator for 5 seconds medium speed. Each capsule varies in the time depending on the manufacturer's guide. Plug and condense first on the lowest spot, which in our case is the proximal box. Add the amalgam incrementally and overlapping each other. You can start the pre-carving while condensing and make sure to overfill for later carving. For carving, always rest your instrument to the tooth structure. This will guide your instrument as to where are your grooves and cusps while you move. As you can see here, you can try different instruments depending on your preference.
Class 5 lesions are located on the gingival third of the facial and lingual surfaces of teeth. The operator position and vision must be 9 o'clock direct. This is the amalgamation. It is the process of alloying of mercury being in liquid state to silver tin metal alloy being in the solid state. Before inserting the amalgam, review the outline of the tooth preparation to form a mental image that will aid later in carving the amalgam. Next, use an amalgam carrier to transfer mixed amalgam to the tooth preparation. Then, increments extruded from the carrier should be smaller for a small preparation, particularly during initial insertion. Then use a cleoid discoid to develop a continuous smooth surface and to remove the excess amalgam. And the last, polish using a tapered burr. This is the Class 5 amalgam preparation in tooth number 4-6. This is the procedure. Using round burr to start entry to the cavity, the direct of the burr should perpendicular to the buccal surfaces of the tooth. Then using the fissure burr to do the outline form. The shape of Class 5 cavity is trapezoidal in shape or could be kidney shaped to be more conservative.
Place the matrix band in the retainer. To prepare the retainer to receive the band, turn the long knob to move the locking vise all the way down to the head of the retainer. Then turn the short knob to loosen the retaining screw. Fold the band to form a loop. Notice that when the band is folded, one edge has a smaller circumference than the other. This design accommodates the difference in tooth circumferences at the contact and gingival levels. Remember that open end of the retainer head is always placed toward the gingiva. The retainer is always placed at the buccal side of any tooth with the knob facing anteriorly to ensure that it is dislodged by anterior teeth or the tongue. Fix the matrix band on the tooth. Tighten the matrix band around the tooth by turning the long knob. This will pull the matrix band up along with the sliding. Tighten the matrix as much as possible around the tooth. This allows for proper amalgam, condensation, and contour development. Then place the wedge.